Welcome to the show, Jamie.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And thanks for sitting down and talking with me tonight. Now, how long have you been in recovery for?
So it'll be this chapter of my recovery journey. It'll be 10 years next March.
So you got about 9.5 years in
Yeah.
this time around.
Yes. Yeah. Because it's
What's your
there.
sober date?
What's that?
What is your sober date?
The last time I used drugs, without a prescription or anything like that, any sort of illicit drug was and it's been this long ago. People don't ask me. March 23rd of 2014. There we go.
So what was going on with you March of 2014 to where you found recovery? Because as you said, it's you just said you've been in recovery a couple of times, and where I guess you had some slip ups along the way.
Yeah, I mean, basically, I tried. Um, I think when I first got the idea or notion that I wanted something different, maybe, or try, it was probably, I'm gonna say, 2006 area, 2005, and so, um, between then and 2014, so probably like 2005, like over a 9 year period, there were several times that I would try um and not get a lot of time. I think once I had maybe close to a year, uh, and um that was when I was using Suboxone. I had done the best I had done by using that, but then I had some major some stuff going. My father passed away, and there was some other stuff, and and not that we know that none of that's an excuse, but it is a um
Reason.
yeah, those are reasons that kind of knock us off track,
Were you
and
close with your dad too? My dad just passed in June, and we were really close.
yeah, I'm sorry to hear that, because yeah, I was really close to him, because me and my mother are not very close. um yeah, he was very protective of me, and very um supportive of me, always, in everything, from whenever, no matter what I did, he was always, um he always loved me, and always supported me, even when I didn't do even when I didn't deserve it, there
Yeah,
you
definitely.
know
I mean,
and so, and my mother's just built differently. She was she just was different. She's there's neither good nor bad. She did, I think, the best that she could. um I don't think she was ever shown, um you know uh I don't think she was really ever shown love and affection as a child much. uh she was the oldest of like six, so I think she became like a junior mom, you know uh and so she wasn't very motherly at times.
how old were you when did they split up at one point?
No, they were no. And it's funny because they did not. They stayed together until my father passed away, and I never understood it. Like, I just didn't. Even as a small child, I almost was. I think all my friends thought how lucky I was to have my parents together, and then I would think, I don't think they should be together. Like that. It was a lot of fighting, and my mom didn't treat him very well either. Because it really was. It was like, if me and him were close, and she didn't like that. She didn't like that because he would, he wouldn't allow her to treat me certain ways, and she didn't like that. So um, she would make his life miserable. So, and so, there was a lot of yelling and arguing and fighting in the house a lot, and I was the only child, and
I
so
was
that
just
meant
going to ask you if you had any siblings.
no, and so that meant a lot of time locked in my bedroom. Not I locked myself.
Yeah.
When I say that, it's me going in
Yeah,
there.
no one was throwing you into the room
Right,
and saying, "Don't come out."
right. No, it was me going in there and not
Yeah.
wanting to come out. And and living my own. I don't know. I guess you could say little fantasy world when when you're a kid and I had being an only child, of course I had um I don't know. I never needed for anything, and I got a lot of things I wanted. Not everything, it wasn't like that because people think that, but it wasn't like that.
When
But
did
I
you
did have
discover drinking or using?
what's that?
How old were you when you discovered, like, I'm assuming you started with alcohol?
I did. And well, I did start with alcohol, but I can remember being younger and being, um, and I like to go and put with my dad to fill the gas tank up in the car because then I could sit and I could sniff the gas that he was pumping. I could be close and I could smell it, and I knew, and I liked the way it felt even as a child. That was pretty
Yeah.
young. Um, and there were other things. There was I was we lived in an apartment that was attached to a neighborhood grocery store. Back then, it was this you don't see this stuff anymore, but it was just a little it was a little grocery store in the neighborhood that served just our neighborhood, and people would come down and they could get stuff on credit, and she'd write it on a little tab, she'd write it down and put it in a little cubby hole, and then they would come on Friday and pay. And she was this German lady, and she was very kind to me. Like she also was somebody that you know she tried to take care of me and protect me um, from some things that she obviously saw that she didn't like either. And so I spent a lot of time in the store with her before I ended up going before I was going to school. And we used to go out to her house for Christmas, and she always had these little chocolates, and they were bottles.
Oh
They
yeah.
had liqueur in them, and I was constantly sneaking those at like 4 and 5 years old. You know what I mean? Like, ooh, um,
I like the way this tastes.
yeah, yeah, and not that I was, like I said, it's not really necessarily. I mean, when you're that young, and it doesn't take a lot to feel a little tiny something in your brain,
Yeah.
and I liked it, and so I was probably 12 or 13. I don't remember exactly. I'm 55 now. It's a long time ago. Um, it either was like almost 13 or I just been turned 13 in that area. And I think I stole a 6-pack from our basement of beer because we had Coors down in the basement. Because back then you couldn't buy Coors here. You could only buy it west of the Mississippi River. Uh,
Oh, really? Hmm.
yeah, there was something about it that you couldn't sell it here, and that's really the movie Smokey and the Bandit.
Yeah.
That's what that's kind of about. They're trying to bring a semi load of Coors beer, east, and so my I had an aunt that lived in Boulder, Colorado. So when they would come back, they would bring it back, and we had some. And my parents, they didn't drink really. I mean, very rarely. My dad's somebody who buy a 6-pack, and like a year later, there's like 3 left. Um,
My dad was the same way. He didn't drink, but they knew how to throw a party.
yeah, yeah,
So they knew that there was alcohol. It was in my basement, just like you. I found it from my parents that just kind of stored it away, and I got into Captain and Coke when I was 11,
uh,
and I would watch The Outsiders, and I thought I was cool drinking like Captain and Coke and watching this like movie about these kids. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I felt myself because we used to fight a lot where I grew up. So I felt like I was one of the outsiders and just was doing bad things. I was already smoking cigarettes by the time I was 12. And when I was 12 is when I started drinking alcoholically, which I'm sure you know the difference between like I was drinking to forget as opposed to drinking to have a good time. Like it wasn't I passed my curiosity stage, and at 12 my friend died, so I graduated to drinking to make myself feel better.
Yes,
Yep.
I do. I know that the difference there. Uh, I didn't drink much of the good time drinking. Like that quickly, I quickly moved on from that. I think even that first time, it was supposed to be me and a friend. We're supposed to split it, and I think we were gonna try and get a couple girls to come, and you know what? There was four of us. We had 6 beers, but you know the girls didn't drink any, and he had one, and I think I had five, and that was quite a bit for me. Not really ever drinking much, and I think I probably did throw up, you know, and but I was like, I'll do that again. You know what I mean? Like, I was like, yeah, I threw up, but it felt good. And I was talking to those girls and, you know, all that. It really did kind of, you know,
It's
it,
almost like it's a rite of passage to throw up.
yeah, yes. And it was very, um, you know, I had no social anxiety. Um, I could be somebody
Do you
and
think
not
maybe
me.
social anxiety has to do with like growing up as his only child?
I think there's that. And, um, you know I have ADHD, but never was um, really never diagnosed with that, and so um, but someone else, you know, I've had other therapists say, have I ever been tested to be as if am I on the autism spectrum at all? You know, like even a little bit, because there is a lot of things that I don't, and this is stuff that I don't know because you know, they're like, and I'm like, no, why would I? You know what I mean? Like, I think I'm pretty normal. And they're like, well, you know, the things you tell me and some of the things that I notice about you and the things that bother you, you know, like you could be a little bit, you know,
You could
and
have
so
tism.
what's that?
That you could have the tism.
Yes, yes. And not like, you know, not
There's a
severe,
spectrum.
but yes.
There like anything else. There's a spectrum of a highly autistic. You see, like in Rain Man, to
Hmm.
somebody who's autistic but is OCD, and they kind of drive their OCD from that kind of portion of their brain. And there's all sorts of different kinds of autistic, and that's I've learned that in the past 5 years. I've been, you know what I mean, like just as people are talking about more, credit TikTok for a lot of it because now people can see other people like in videos and be like, oh, that's like me. I recognize that.
Right. Yes. And, you know, because there's a lot of, there's there's just you know like noises, sounds. I don't like to be touched. Um, there's certain things that I don't like the feel of, like certain textures and things like that. That really, um, you know, people get close to me and I cannot take. You know what I mean? It's like it's almost like
Yeah.
when I go in a room, I try to find a seat where I'm trying to make it so nobody really can sit beside me. But if I have to, I'm going to sit somewhere where only one side, you know, like I'm going to sit on a corner,
Yeah.
and then I only have to be beside one person instead of two. I really can't. Um, yeah, and so I think there's a lot of that going on. You know, you know, and so I think these substances really kind of made some of that a little easier to deal with some, you know, especially school. You know, school's hard enough. Uh, and all your insecurities and all that crap, and then you had maybe a little bit of that, and there was it was I don't know, there, like, I was, and I hate using this word. I really hate it because I don't think it really means much. But they like to use it, and they say kid's a gifted child, and I say, well, what? I think everyone's gifted. You know what I mean? Like, there isn't anybody that's, you know, just people have different gifts, and so I guess for school, they were like, oh, they wanted me to skip grades, and they wanted me to do this and that, and I really didn't want to do any of that. I just wanted to go to school and be in classes with my friends, and graduate from high school and live my life. But and my mom was very um very she was driven to live her life through me, I believe. Like, and so yes, they're saying this, and you're this, and you're gonna get straight A's, and if you don't, there again, um it was very, nothing ever was like good enough. If I got a B, I was grounded for 6 weeks until the next grade card came out. These kind of things that then I'm just like, okay, like this, I don't even, and so, and not the and the fact that, like, every grade card, especially in elementary school, were to say the same things. I didn't have any self control. I couldn't. I spoke out in class too much. I was I couldn't keep my hands to myself. All of these things that indicate I'm a bad kid and I can't behave correctly, and and so I would get in trouble, and I would, can you just behave? And I'm trying. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, I really am. Do you think that I want to get in trouble? Do you think I'd like to come home and hear this? I don't. And I sit in class and I tell myself I'm not going to call out the answer to things, or I'm not going to stare out the window and be somewhere else, or I'm not going to um, be bored and be messing with other people that are around me. But it just happens. You know what I mean? Like, it just happens. It's like I can't control it. And so, there was that, and I just thought, I mean, you're just a fuck up. You can't do, you just can't behave yourself, and you can't do things right, and you're just a bad kid. You know,
So
that was the message.
that was what do you mean that was the message? Like that you could.
That I was just a bad kid. Like, like,
Oh, I see. You were
that,
somebody, yeah, because you're talking out of class and
and
acting
people,
out.
yeah, and they just think that I'm doing that on purpose. It's like, he's doing it on purpose because we keep telling him not to do it, and so,
So were
um,
you drinking during those years, like during high school at all?
oh yeah, 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 yeah. I'm well, more so than I was. That was more of the year. So I was drinking, and I would drink, but not during school. But I would smoke pot, before school and during school, and um, and so drinking became, um, I don't know, that was a weekend, more of a weekend thing, and I drank a lot. Like, when I drank, I just didn't drink daily. So when Friday would come and there was a football game, there also, my dad, somehow or another, I don't know where that came from, but he had a ton of airplane bottle, the little bottles
Yep.
of
Oh,
liquor.
I know them very well.
He had tons of them in the basement. I don't know where they came from. I have no idea, but I would grab like 20 of them and put them. I had a jean jacket at the time. They had pockets on the inside. I just
17 of them equals a fifth of Jack or whatever. I think
and just
17 shots in a fifth.
yeah, and I would just put them in there, and I'd go to the football game, and sit in the stands and be drinking those because they're little and I could kind of hide them
Yeah.
and then act like a fool, you know.
Hides in the palm of your hand.
Yeah, yeah,
You're
and a fool and whatever. You know, I didn't care because
drunk.
yeah, yes, and so you know there was you know so it was the drinking was more about if I was going to be out and be social and be around a bunch of people, and smoking pot was more the like during school. It was a little easy. I liked that a little better. Now there was a point there. I don't know. I think I would have been in ninth grade, which was for here. That was the last grade of junior high. Then now it's not. Ninth graders go to high school now, but they didn't then. And I know, and I found in our medicine cabinet, I found my mom had some pills, and they were yellow jackets, what they called yellow jackets back then, which was, I believe, just it was amphetamines, like real amphetamines, and I got into those, and I like those. I used to do those during school too, sometimes, which I cannot believe I did because, you know, that's like a, you know, um,
Yeah, sit quietly at your desk while you have this upper go through your body.
yes,
No
yes,
wonder why you were acting out. You
but
you were on speed.
well, actually, I didn't act out as much. Like I would just kind of sit there and just like and just kind of zone out.
Internalizing everything.
Yes, and so I did get it. You know, I got into those. Also, she had, you know, it was the back in the time of, you know, women were like, I want to lose weight or I need energy during the day, and so here's some speed, and then how do I get to sleep at night? Well, here's some barbiturates, and which you don't hear about those much anymore. Um, but like it was called Placidils, and so I would take one of those maybe at night if I wanted to go to bed, and that would put me out, and then I would get up the next day, and we would start again. Um,
Sounds like we have very similar because I would drink almost every night.
right,
Um, but I would wake up and I would take muscle relaxers before school and during school. I would smoke before school, and I smoked cigarettes since I was 12. So, I can smoke a cigarette and kill the smell of weed. And
right,
walk into high school, all the teachers knew I smoked because I'd walk in and just smelling like I didn't know that it didn't smell. No one told me.
right.
But and I quickly graduated to drinking every day. My senior year, we drank every day. It didn't matter if it was Monday, Friday, where I was at, what I was doing. Even if I was just pouring it into like a McDonald's cup and drinking it out of there, like while I'm driving around town, I was drinking.
Yeah, we I wasn't drinking that much then, but it did, you know. Well, by the time I left high school, I had done lots of different drugs. I mean, I had, you know, I had even got into some cocaine here and there. Obviously, being in high school, I didn't quite have the
The
money
money.
for that. I mean, you know, every once in a great while, yeah, we would, you know, I would get it as a treat, you know, and so, you know, and then I don't know when I left high school or I graduated. I don't know how I graduated, but I did. Uh, I'm still, you know, like I didn't do anything. That's, you know, I don't remember doing anything except taking tests. I would take tests and I'd do the exams, and I would do well on all that. But I didn't do homework. I don't think
Did
I
you go to
did any homework.
college?
With that?
Did you go to college?
No, 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 no. No, I took all my courses were college prep was what they called them, you know, and I had everything that I could have, and I was going to, I was going to, and then um, I got into, I was going to work like a year and save some money. And so I started working at Whirlpool here. Um, my dad worked there, and so I got in. But it was very odd. Like you would get hired, but you weren't permanent, and then you had to work a certain amount of days. But if you get, then they would lay you off some, and then you would lose some days, and then they would, So it would take a long time to become permanent. Not a long, long time, but you know. And so in the course of this, I'm getting laid off for a week, and then I'm going back and working like 2 weeks, and then
Like you were a contractor?
no, it was more of a you were. So it was kind of like a temp service, but it wasn't. It was their own. They just hired you in, and they paid you like they paid normal, but you didn't. You weren't permanent. Like you you know
You were seasonal.
yeah, you're sort of like a vacation replacement type person or something like. So you, like I said, I would work a couple weeks and then I'd be off for a week. So then that would take a week off of my, you know, so I would have 2 weeks towards being permanent, and then I'd be off a week, and that would take a week away. But I was steadily getting there, and then I was like, one of the times I was off, I was down at my friend's house, and my mom called, and she said, "Oh, Whirlpool called, and they want you to come in for a drug test." And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" Because they had never, like, they had not done drug testing, and so they decided they were going to start. And my group that was kind of called in was like the first group in Whirlpool history, at least in Finley, to be drug tested, and I failed probably miserably. So
They didn't call you first to tell you?
they did, but home. So my mom took the call, and then called me at my friend's house and said, "Hey, Whirlpool called, and they want you to come in for a drug test, and to go, because they want you to start back up." And I was like, "Oh shit," you know. And so I think that is. I always tell myself that's the first time I had a super negative consequence, but it really wasn't, because school, my lack of effort, in school, um, regardless of what all the reasonings, that was a negative consequence, because I could have, you know, things could have been a lot different. I think. But anyways, I lost that job, and that was good pay. This was like 1986, and I think I was making like $14 an hour, which then was really good. I mean, that was good money. Uh, and so then I kind of started working like restaurant. This one restaurant is a pizza place, and I met this girl, and we dated for like 3 months, and she got pregnant, and we decided to get married. Of course, because that's the
What you do in the
yeah,
80s.
that's what you do. I'm never gonna say it's ever been the smartest thing anybody's done, um, but yes, that was that was pretty much the thought was, well, well, this is what we will do, and it didn't work out. I mean, no surprise that it did not work out. And that's not on her or me. We were kids, man. I was 19 and she was 18. And if you're 19 and 18, you don't think you're a kid. You're a kid. I mean,
Yeah.
I look back now and I'm like, yeah, I was a kid. I didn't know crap. And I thought I knew it all, but I didn't know crap. And we
Until you
tried.
rent a car.
Yeah. I mean, we tried. We made a go of it. And I think we were together for about 4 years, and when that ended, uh, I didn't take it very well. And I mean, as I think now, I definitely think, yes, that wasn't her fault. It wasn't my fault. It just was, that was two kids trying to be adults, and of course we failed miserably. But then I didn't look at it. I didn't look at it that way then. I really didn't. I looked at it as, this is the person that I gave up all this stuff for, poor me, all that stuff. Not ever thinking once that she may be thinking the same thing, and that we really weren't good to each other. It wasn't really a one-sided thing. And so I really, that was when I started going out to the bar all the time, almost every night. And then the drinking got bad. And not just the drinking, but then I discovered, well, if I'm drinking too much, and the way I'm drinking is I'm not making it till closing time. So maybe, yeah, a little cocaine helps with that. If I'm about ready to pass out from alcohol, I can go do the bathroom and do a line or so, and I'm ready again. So, and then I go to after hours, and it wouldn't be, it really wasn't uncommon to get off work, drink, do some coke, go to an after hours, drink some more, do some more coke, go home, take a Xanax to get to sleep, and then wake up and feel like crap. So I take a couple Percocets because that'll make me feel decent, and say I'm not doing that tonight, and go to work. And about 3/4 of the way through work, I'm like, yeah, I'll do it. And I did that, and I did that a lot.
This podcast is also sponsored by BetterHelp. If you are looking for therapy and not able to get something right away locally, you can do that with them. Within 48 hours, you can find a therapist to get on telehealth with you. I mean, I haven't heard anything but great things from people that have already done it, that watch my show or listen to my show. If you're looking to get 10% off your first month, you can go to betterhelp.com/MJsPNPMCA. That is betterhelp.com/MJsPNPMCA.
For how long?
Yeah, I had a daughter. Me and her, we had a daughter, and she was not taking care of our daughter, and I was not taking care of our daughter. So my mom and dad started to take care of her, and so and that didn't make me feel very good. But I couldn't have her where I was at because I lived with this guy, and he was, he was really into coke, and like a lot. Like he had some money, and so he was getting big amounts, and he was kind of selling it to these people that he worked with, and so it wasn't uncommon for me to get up in the morning and come out, and they're all around at the kitchen table, and they have this huge pile on the kitchen table, and I'm like, and they're like, hey, you want some? And I'm like, hey, not yet. It's like 10 in the morning, and I got to work today, and I don't feel, I won't work if I start in. So,
Yeah.
But yeah, so it got kind of bad, and then I don't know, I was the person I was getting a lot of coke from myself. They introduced me to heroin, and that's probably about, I don't know, I'm going to say about 1993 or 94. And I started doing that because I really liked that. That was that was like
Fuck the Percocet. Fuck the Percocet.
Yeah.
Give me
Yeah. Yes, this is like, woo, this is like it. This is really what I've been waiting for all my life, really.
You went from grade school to college.
Yes. And so I was working. I had when I got married, I had gotten a job at this factory, and I'd been there. I worked there about 5 years, and then I lost my job there, because I was doing a lot of coke, really, and missing work, and so I lost that job. And that job wasn't a bad job either. then I started working at this other job. It was a retail job, and I started doing the heroin, and I got strung out. I didn't know what that was. I didn't know what that was, and I thought
You didn't know what those are.
yeah, that won't happen to me. Yeah, right. About the first time I remember not having any, and I felt really sick, and I didn't know that was dope sick until I went over to my friend's house and he gave me some, and I was like, oh, now I feel better. And so yes, Jamie, now congratulations. Now you are physically dependent now, and you're gonna get dope sick if you don't have it. And so, um, I got really
Did that
bad.
change anything, or did that just make it worse?
What's that?
Did that change anything when you knew that, like, okay, I'm addicted physically? Because, like, I remember the day that I learned I was physically addicted, and I just was doubling down, like, well, I just got to make sure I have enough for me at all times.
Right. Now so I guess I didn't quit. Let's put it that way. It wasn't one of those like, oh, you should probably try to quit. Um, in fact, I ended up uh, that's really kind of how I learned how to use IV was because I was snorting and it just wasn't working very well anymore. Uh, so, another guy that I knew, he would use the needle, and so I started using it, and then I the place I was working, I went in one day, and they were the manager and then like the regional manager were there, and they asked for my key. I was assistant manager. So they asked for my keys and stuff, and told me to leave. And then, I had gotten I got a phone call from the police, and they want a detective, and he wanted to talk to me, and and that was a big, there was somebody was embezzling money there, um, and they wanted to talk to me about it, and so I went in and I didn't talk to them much about it. I wanted to know what was going on, of course, and so then um, nothing ever really came of that. Those were the days that there weren't cameras everywhere back then.
Yeah, I got caught stealing hundreds out of my registers when I worked at Best Buy, and the register that comes up, but you slide the big bills through the bottom.
Yeah,
I would go over there, and I got caught eventually, but I would go over to it and stand where the camera was. I'm a big guy, so it's easy to kind of black myself out.
uh-huh.
And I would put double-sided tape on like a reward zone card, and I would literally fish hundreds out of the drawers. And they were always drawers that I never signed into that day,
Right.
so that all these other people are coming up with a drawer shortage, not me. And I would walk out, there were $500-600 a night, which would pay for my day or 2 days worth. I was going through like $300 a day of a habit, and I knew where to get money at every day. And so eventually I got caught, but they couldn't find any money on me. It's because I'd already went out to smoke a cigarette as soon as I got the money, and I already had somebody waiting for me outside, so I paid them and they got on their way. So they were like, "Where's the money that we saw you take?" I'm like, "That's the money already gone." They're like, "Well, where did you put it?" And I'm like, "It's just gone." I just never elaborated.
It disappeared.
It's just not here anymore. 'Cause I didn't want to admit that I'm high. I didn't want to be like, "Oh, I spent it on pills."
Well, they I went in and they did say they were doing an audit, and it wasn't complete, but they were thinking around there was some sort of shortage if it were between money and of course product. But I mean, you can't blame all the product on anybody that worked there, because I'm sure there are some people were stealing anyways. But anyways, they were like $25,000, and that's when I was just, well, that's when I said I want to talk to a lawyer. Like I'm not talking to you anymore. And then of course they kept calling me and they were asking me to take a lie detector test, and I had a friend who was in law school. He hadn't graduated, but he was like, just tell them that they have to prove that you're guilty, and that you don't have to prove you're innocent, and tell them that your lawyer says to stop harassing you. Oh, I didn't have a lawyer, but that's what I told him, and I never heard from him ever again. And so, I mean, honestly, there were other people there doing things also. I, you know,
When you work in a retail store, shit's gonna happen, and there's
yeah, yeah,
breakage. You gotta, you know what I mean. You account for losing money, just a
right.
certain percentage every year. So, how long did your addiction go with opiates?
Oh, that was so when that happened and I got fired, and the cops, the detectives wanted to talk to me, and so the manager there also, he he was also using. So he obviously he ended up um he told my dealer that what had happened, and then my dealer wouldn't sell to me and other people wouldn't. So I ended up, at that point in time, I quit, and it was probably, it was so bad. um and So I quit. I quit cold turkey, and it was horrible. And so, but I was drinking and doing some coke, you know. So there was always there seemed to be this. I would be on the opiates, or I probably was drinking and doing cocaine, one of the two. And so this kind of thing goes on. I never really stopped the opiates. There were times that I had it more under control. I want to say I wasn't getting strung out, but I still would use it here and there. Um, and I was able to do that because I was drinking and using other stuff. You know what I mean? Like, so, uh, in the, I around that time, I ended up, I got this other, this other woman. I didn't date her very long either, and I got her pregnant. Uh, and so, um, she, well, this before, actually, this was like before I quit. Um, she actually moved away because she was like, she had two other kids, and she was like, I can't, me and you, I can't be around you. Like, you destroy things. Like, and I did, I expect people to, that are going to be in a relationship with me, I expect them to set themselves on fire. You know what I mean? Like, this is what, if you're going to be with me, then you might as well, this is the way it's going to be. You're going to either, you're going to be in pain, like, like, and so she ended up leaving and she moved to Arkansas, and then I didn't see my kid for a long time. Um, and then when she did move back here, I still didn't see her through. Well, she didn't live in Findlay. She lived in another little town out, about a half hour away from here. And so I still didn't see her. So I had two kids, and I wasn't really a father to either one. I mean, my oldest daughter, I was kind of in her life. I would see her, and I would do some things, and I would go to some stuff, but I didn't take care of her. Um, and and my life just was so chaotic, and it was just alcohol and drugs. And then I I met another woman, and we were together 5 years, and I had two sons with her. uh but it was so usually if I was with somebody, that was when it wasn't the opiate. It was drinking though, a lot of drinking and then cocaine. And so that that ended up happening. My last child was born in 2000. That was my second son. And so, from, I'm gonna say from like about 93 or so. So probably for 7 years there was some opiates. Like in the beginning of that, the opiates were bad, and then it was drinking and cocaine. But then, my son was born in 2000. He was born with a rare genetic blood disorder where he very similar to hemophilia, but it was called Glanzmann's thrombocythemia, and his platelets didn't have the protein on the surface of them, so they didn't stick together. So his blood wouldn't clot. Like, he would, if he bumped his arm and it would start bruising, it would get big, and it would, if he bumped his lip and it started bleeding, it would bleed for days. If there was that kind of stuff. When he was a baby and we lifted his legs up to change his diaper and wipe him off, we would put bruises on his legs just from holding his legs, that kind of stuff. So as he got a little older and he was walking, and things got worse because, he's a kid and he doesn't understand, hey, there's things that you can't do, that you see your brothers jumping off the couch in the bed and playing WWE. You can't do that. And I could tell him that, but he would still do things. And so, there was one time that he almost died, and he was almost dead, and they ended up all his veins were he had been internal bleeding, and they couldn't get an IV in him because all of his veins had collapsed. So they had to have the trauma team and come up from the ER, because we were in Toledo, and they got one in his jugular vein and saved him. And it was like 2 hours later, and he's jumping up and down in his bed. And I'm like, kid, you almost died 2 hours ago. Like, chill, and so then we ended up discussing he had a pediatric hematologist, and she was talking about how they had done a stem cell transplant on this girl that had Glanzmann's, and that it had cured her. And were we interested? And so we were, and that we went down to Cincinnati Children's Hospital. I'm gonna say that was probably 2005. So he would have been about 5 years old, and so when somebody has a transplant, you have to be there a minimum of 6 months, no matter what. It's a 6-month commitment. So, I had a job where she had her job. She couldn't get FMLA yet because she hadn't been there long enough, and so, my job, I had lost my job because I would get calls. I couldn't get anybody to babysit him because they would freak out. And so I would get calls and say, hey, your son, blah, blah, blah. And they would say, oh, you're going to leave. I said, well, my son needs taken care. They would say it like this. They'd say, well, do what it is that you have to do. And I was like, damn straight, I'm going to. Like, my kid needs somebody. What do you want me to just leave him,
Yeah.
So they ended up finding a reason, and truly, this time was, I've taken responsibility for every other job that I've lost, and this one I actually was doing pretty good, and they figured out a way to fire me, and they did. And so I was the one that stayed. I had offered to stay down there, and so I was gonna stay in Cincinnati Monday through Friday. She would get off work and come down Friday after work, and then I would come back up to Findlay, and then on Sunday I would go back down, and I was doing all that, and a friend of mine's dad passed away from cancer, and he had all of these Percocets and other pain pills, and he was selling them to me super cheap, and I was doing them, and at the same time, with that.
I'm listening.
Okay, so then at the same time, I'm going down there, and there's a bunch of kids. Like, this is a children's hospital, so there's a bunch of kids, and they're dying like every day. Like, there's a kid dying, and because I'm there, and I've been, especially when it was about 4 months in, um, there's other kids, and they're there for, and some of them are going to be there for a little while, and then something goes bad, and they die, and I'm up um in the transplant ward, and parents are like, "How's Dakota doing?" And I'm like, "Great, everything's going good," and they're talking about how this one couple was talking about how their daughter, this was the third time that she was having a transplant, and they were, and if it didn't work this time, they were just going to take her for and take her for vacations and let her die. And I could hear them. I would hear them crying because the chemo causes like sores on the insides of your mouth, and really bad and stuff. And yeah, I was having a hard time, and I came back, and I actually had called my doctor before, and I tried to tell him, I'm like, "Look, man, I don't know, I'm I'm having heart palpitations." I'm like, basically, I didn't want to, like, I was like, not quite suicidal, but I was I was like, this is horrible.
I always say I didn't want to kill myself. I just didn't want to be conscious anymore.
Yes. And so, well, then I came back, and my friend was like, I think he knew that I was like, I think he thought that I was selling the pills and making money, but I think that he came to the conclusion that I was actually using most of them. And so he was like, "Well, I don't have any left." I knew that he did, but, and so then I had to, I ended up going sort of cold turkey on the pills again, while I was there, and it wasn't as bad as before, because that's the straight heroin. This was, because I wasn't doing it. I didn't have, like, these weren't like Oxy 80s or anything. They were maybe some Perk 10s and stuff. And it's not that I wasn't doing enough to be sick, but it wasn't like before. And so I did get through that while I was there, almost towards the end. And then the day that he was going to get to go home, there was a young couple that had been there, that got there maybe about a week after I had got there, and their daughter had something that something with the trachea, and it didn't form correctly. And there's this doctor that's there that's like world class that fixes that stuff. And so and the last day, I was outside smoking a cigarette, and they came out, and they asked if I would stand with them, because they were gonna disconnect their daughter from the vent. And I didn't know what to say, because I didn't really want to do it, but they were young. Like, I wasn't old. I was, I was in my 30s, but they were like young 20, like early 20s, you know. And I kept thinking, well, they don't have anybody here. You know what I mean? They have no one. And so I went up, and that was like the first time I had seen a human die. And and then I left and came back to Finley, and I immediately went to the bar, and I drank to oblivion. And that was, I think, that was a point where it was like, okay, I just went down, and and that was where it was. I couldn't get out. You know, like before I'd kind of done it where I would have my times, but you know, you kind of you kind of do this, and then you have
flows.
right. This was it was down. It was really a downward spiral. So you know, this is like, so like I said, that was 2005, and 2006 was when I had first contemplated, because I really did go into a downward spiral to where um, I got, somehow or another, I got hired at Cooper Tire. I don't know how I passed the drug test. I did. I think because the opiates came up, but I had a prescription that I had, you know, from somewhere, and I'm like, oh, I have a prescription for those, and so, but then I got hurt at work, and that was an automatic drug test,
Automatic drug test.
yes, and that started, that started a, I don't know, within, that was 2006. I started going to rehabs, quite often. I know probably between 2010 and 2013, I went to one place like 15 times. Uh, in fact, I went and they told me that if they let me come in, that would probably be the last time, because I was taking up a bed of somebody that might actually get help.
Yeah.
They, you know, that they were like, oh, because we're not helping you.
I used there was a meeting, you know, the slips for meeting slips for people that are like for court.
Yeah.
I did this meeting in LA that they were so strict that if you were looking to go there to get your slip formed signed, they would sign it at the door and wouldn't let you in, because unless you wanted to be in there.
Right.
Like they were just so like, nope, we're not going to sign your slip at the end because you're just going to take up a seat as somebody who wants to be here. So that makes a lot of sense of them saying this is it or we're not letting you back in.
So it's funny because because now I sit in meetings where through my job I do a lot of meetings with people from that are important people at these rehabs around our area, and with, you know, city officials and people like that, and every every time I see somebody, if they're new from that place, I tell them that story that you guys told me. Basically, what you told me was I was a waste of space. That's what I heard. Okay, as a person, I thought, well, I'm trying. You know what I mean? Like, I really did. It was like, I'm trying. I, I wouldn't be here if I weren't trying. Like, this really isn't a, you know, I guess people, you know, I was worked at our hospital for a while, and nurses would be like, oh, that person doesn't really want it. And I was, well, wait a minute. Why they're here? Like, they're here. Um, and they don't, like, this isn't like a pleasant place for them to come to. Like, um, so if they're here, they probably want it because they could just go steal, you know, like
They can go AMA whenever they want.
Right. And so for you to say that tells me that I tell you're part of the problem. Like, you know, do you think they can't tell that they can't feel that from you? Like when you talk to them?
Yeah.
I said, even if you say the right things, they can tell. I said, I know because I was that person. You know what I mean? And so, you know, I went, you know, I don't know. I went to that, and things just got worse and worse and worse. And, you know, I had to be brought back to life 3 times. And, um, you know, and so then I don't know so the night that I actually woke up, I've been working in a job. I lost my job at Cooper. They finally figured out how to get rid of me. Cooper Tire was one, very high paying job. I don't know. I probably averaged about $26 an hour there. I didn't own a car. I didn't have a place to live. That was a lot of money. I don't even know where it's at. I tell people, like, if I had all the money I spent on drugs, I would buy a house with cash. And I don't think they believe me. Like,
I don't think though we would have the same. I've heard that math before of like, oh, I spent this many dollars a day for this long. I would have had X amount. I don't buy into that math because we're not driven today to make money for the day. And plus, a lot of us are breaking a lot of laws
right.
in order to get that amount of money per day to be using. So you take away that, the consequences like that. That's why the math is different for me, is because I know I was getting my money illegally in a lot of different ways, selling mostly drugs to get drugs.
Right.
And it was just playing that game over and over again. But I'm breaking laws to make $300 a day. So
Yes.
technically, I wouldn't put my, not even my sobriety, my own life on the line like that and sell like I used to, because
Right.
I'm not driven by the drug anymore. So I kind of think whenever I hear that math, I think it's a little skewed with our intentions and what they were before compared to what they are now.
I would tend to agree. Because I even though I wasn't somebody that broke the law a lot, I did.
Yeah.
I was a I'm not meant for jail. Like, I wasn't built for jail. I'm not, and I'm not a good predator type person. Like, I just, even in that world, I wasn't. I was good
Yeah.
at taking care of myself and keeping myself safe, and that. I didn't really prey on people, and people, but people, I was pretty one of those that's kind of neutral. I could just kind of, you know, I didn't get preyed upon either, though, because it's like I'm smart enough to know what you're doing, man. Like, I'm not doing that shit. So, but I need to grab a charger real quick, because I think my phone's gonna, it's not gonna die, but it's getting there. If I can find one that. Yes, this one's longer. About that, I thought it would maybe last longer, but it's not. I definitely probably want you to edit this out.
That's fine. We're wrapping up soon anyway, so don't worry about it.
So yes, it's so I woke up that evening, and I was in a panic. I didn't know where. I had absolutely no money. I had no dope, and I was like, I guess I would say this time around, I just heard a voice in my head said, "You quit today or you die." That was it. Like, it was, it just was. It wasn't God. It wasn't none of that. It just was knowing. I just knew, like, you're gonna die. Like, you are gonna die if you don't quit. And so I went out to our hospital, and I told him I was gonna kill myself. I wasn't, but I knew that I pretty much probably needed locked up to not use, and I didn't want to go to jail. So I went to there, and they admitted me to our psych ward, and and I detoxed there for about 7 days. And then they sent me to a Salvation Army Adult Rehabilitation Center. You know what one of those is?
Yep. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so it was in Dayton, Ohio. I was there for about 4.5 months, and I got kicked out because I accidentally brought a pocket knife in from work that, you know, you work for them. And I didn't know it was I forgot it was in my pocket, of course. I got up to my room and I was like, damn it. So I put it in my drawer and I was like, I'll take it back tomorrow morning. And I didn't. And they found it and they kicked me out. And so, you know, I ended up coming back to Findlay and I, you know, I just wanted to be done. And I had told myself a year, Jamie, 1 year. And if after 1 year, if your life does suck, then you know what? They're not going to stop making drugs because you quit. So you definitely can go get them. And so I went that year, and things were pretty good. And then I started working as a men's recovery home coordinator. And then I left that job, and I became like a peer support and worked at they had a little rehab here for the place that I was a patient at for probably 20-25 years. I'd been a patient off and on there. Then I went to the hospital to be a peer support in their medical withdrawal management. And this whole time, my recovery was changing and growing into different things. I at first I had always been sort of this 12-step person, and not that I don't believe in it. I think that it's helpful and that it can help people. And I still would like to go. I just don't go because now I work for the health department and I'm a harm reduction coordinator, peer support. So I run a syringe service, a couple of them here in town, and I get Narcan out as much as I can to people. And some folks there don't appreciate that. So I go and sometimes, yeah, I like to go because there are people there that I care and love and care about that really help me out a lot. But then other times I don't feel so good when I leave there. I have people that there's some people there that definitely that think that I just help people use drugs and that I encourage I encourage people to use drugs, and really nothing could be farther from the truth. I encourage people to stay alive and stay healthy and safer.
Yeah.
You know, I enable people to do that. And so, but some people can't see that, and I don't have anything against them. It's just that sometimes it's better for my mental health to bypass some of that.
And I totally get that. That makes a lot of sense that you would be, you know, shying away from maybe 12 steps because they're not going to completely buy into harm reduction. I'm a cannabis patient and I have been for 5 years. And to me, that tells me that's 5 years of me using cannabis and 0 years of me sniffing a pill. So how much is it really helping me? And also, I'm not spending, if I run out of weed, I run out of weed. I'm not lying, cheating, and stealing and begging and borrowing to go get some more.
Yeah, I agree. For the last couple of years, you know, I've been taking some ADHD medicine. I don't take 2 of them a day. I take 1 a day. I don't ever. Some days, like on the weekend, sometimes I don't take it at all because if I don't have anything going on, I don't take it. It has enabled me to do a lot of things in my recovery and in my career that honestly I don't think I'd have been able to do. You know, you know, I'm on the board of Harm Reduction Ohio. Like, that's the biggest harm reduction organization in Ohio. They do the most distribution of naloxone. So, you know, I've done a lot of stuff and it's not like I'm patting myself on the back. It's like I'm proud of the stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that I've had the opportunity. That's really what it is, to do these things. Like, and I would not have had that opportunity without some harm reduction in my past, in my life, you know. And so there again, I'm nobody special. I shouldn't be on this earth any more than anyone else. And if I'm here because I had been Narcan 3 times, then I feel like, damn it, everyone should be afforded that opportunity. And I don't care how many times it is. Like, I don't, and I'm not gonna entertain the thought of somebody saying that. I don't I don't suffer that well when people start talking about that.
Yeah.
I can listen to your arguments about syringe services and stuff like that. But when you want to talk about saving a human being's life, then I draw the line there. Like, you know, that's really no debate for me.
I appreciate you taking the time, Jamie, to sit down with me and go over, you know, your history and talk about what you're doing now with everything with the syringe exchange. I mean, all that, and being on the board of the harm reduction. Those are like gifts that you get in sobriety that not everybody sees all the time. Sometimes you're not able, and, you know, saving somebody's life with Narcan. I mean, I know a girl on here that has saved 15 people in her house with Narcan over her time in sobriety. And, you know, those are 15 more lives that aren't part of the statistics anymore. And it's all because of Narcan. So,
15 people that will have the chance at recovery.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So, we're two sitting here and both huge fans of harm reduction. I'm glad I had a guy on here, Ken Anderson. He wrote the book on harm reduction for drinking.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I'll have to check that out, because I'm always about wanting to read more stuff, you know.
Yeah. It's harm reduction. It's called HAMS. Harm reduction, abstinence. I forget. Moderate, or I forget, man. It's been a while.
I know. I'm pretty sure I know what you're talking about. I have heard of it. Now I need to get the book.
Yeah, I'll send you the interview with him.
Okay.
He's another Midwesterner. He's from Wisconsin.
Nice.
Or Minnesota. He's from Wisconsin, yeah. But I put people on here from all over the friggin' world. I lose track sometimes.
Right.
But thank you again for coming on, Jamie. I'm glad we finally got our schedules worked out.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity, man. Because and I know it took a long time, but I'm old. It's a long story.
We got to figure it out. No, we got to figure it out.
Yeah. So
I'll talk to you soon, bud.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right. See ya.
See ya.